Hey, everybody, Rory McDonald from Macdon and Associates coming to you with the next episode of Tuesdays with Rory. Super pumped to have a guest in the studio, if that makes sense. They're actually joining me all the way from Texas, the land of Texas. Super pumped to have John Bauer in the studio today, talking through business, life, family, balance, finding your why, so many different things. We're really excited to have him on. But without further ado, John, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're all about, and what you're doing down there in Texas.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, Roy. Good to be with you. It's been a long time since I've been to the great state of Michigan, but I'm glad to be with you today. So I am involved in a bunch of things, primarily because of A, my wife, and then B, our children. But I primarily work for a company called Bonfire, based here in Dallas. We're in prop technology, which is primarily multifamily. And so we're marketing automation and then communicating with residents. And so we solve for kind of two pain points, meaning people don't pick up their phone. I don't know how much you see that in single family stuff. They prefer to text. So we plug into their PMS system or whatever and give them the ability to message prospects. But we do a ton of that on the resident side, just communicating about rent, about renewals, about the luau that's coming up this Friday. So we work all over the U.S., from East Coast, West Coast, do a lot of stuff in student housing, just for the market. The people that actually text the most are the younger ones. So we've been doing that. I was just out traveling last week in Irvine, California, which was pretty crazy. So I came home on a Friday night and then got in. Saturday was kind of whipped. And then Sunday, the second thing, my wife and I actually started a business called Neighborhood Supply Co. So she does custom hats, which actually came out of a mutual friend of ours, Jason Sudan, was doing a Ypsilanti hat company when he lived up in Michigan. So what we do is custom embroidery. So we'll do stuff for companies, nonprofits, churches, moms. And so on Sunday, we were actually doing a hat bar from 8 a.m. to like 2, which was crazy. So that's Neighborhood Supply. Yeah, we do that. And then also from time to time, I do a little bit less personal coaching now, but I'll do consulting for businesses. Usually when people get stuck and they've kind of lost why, they've had some sort of transition, they've had one of their leaders, bail, something like that. But I'll come in and work with vision, with strategy, and oftentimes with a sales strategy. I'm like, well, what are you doing? How are you connecting? What are the channels you're going through? And so I'll do that as well from time to time. So not to mention having kids and all the other things that come with that. So yeah, man, that's a little bit of what I do.
I love it. So I can't remember, how long was it that we met ago? I want to say it was like almost 7 years ago.
2017 feels right.
Yeah. Certainly before
I
COVID.
bet it was 2015, I bet.
Yeah. It was a while ago, but people who watch this, who know me, they hear all the things that you're saying and they go, yeah, that sounds a lot like Rory, like just running as fast as he can, trying to get home to his kids as quick as he can, trying to make it to soccer practice, and, balancing all the things that exist with not just being a dad, but trying to, in my case, in my situation, you talked about your why, like setting your family up and next generation up for, at least for me, a different life than what it is that I had growing up, but also having the purpose, the meaning, which in my case, and I know yours too, revolves around Jesus when it comes to setting up my next generation and making sure that they're prepared to take on whatever it is that God's calling them into. And touching a little bit too on your coaching and some of the consultation and stuff that you do, I've noticed one of the things that a lot of business owners, and I'm going to speak specifically to real estate agents, that they struggle with is they get into business because they think it's fun. They think it's cool. They're really excited. They can't wait to do it. And they burn out in a case of in a matter of 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and they're just grinded down to nothing. And a lot of ways, I'm going to let you speak to this, but in a lot of ways, I think it comes back to how deep are the roots into what it is that you actually are doing this for. So I want you to speak to that a little bit, just because I think it's really important for all the business owners that are listening here.
Well, there's different kind of levels of coaching. So a buddy of mine Jackson Thomas, is the most coached up dude I've ever met. He works for a mortgage group down here in Dallas. Of course, made hay a couple of years ago when everybody was refining, and then he's still doing very well, even though rates are higher. And he has had marriage coaching. He's had, as a lender, coaching on how to, drum up new deals. He's had coaching, personal coaching. So he's been all over the place. So when you're talking about, those people that see, I don't know, the money you can make, or they get excited about the work, and then when a pain point hits, or the dry season, like for us in our space for Bonfire and multifamily and student housing, the summer months are just slower. They're just slower because everyone's gone on vacation. And so it's a grind during the summer, specifically in Texas when it's 105 degrees like it was yesterday. And so the way I think about what you're doing as far as work, I love this personality test called Strength Finders, because it talks about how you're wired, about how your brain is put together. And so it really is about what gives you emotional energy. And so regardless of the space that people are in, I always want to know what their strengths are. I have a buddy that I've been texting, trying to get him to take it. Chuck, shout out if you'll actually take it, because it really shows you what motivates you and what gives you energy. So when your tank gets empty and you get drained because of taxes, and because you didn't close that deal, or you didn't get the client that you wanted, you didn't get that listing you wanted, below the why, I think, is really just how your brain is wired and what your DNA is saying. And so these strengths are what you need to rely on to give you the emotional energy to do the things that you don't want to do. Like, I am not a detail person. I asked you, Rory, before this, like, what are we talking about again? I know we talked about it. I don't like details as much, only when they suit my purposes. And so, and my strengths, a lot of what motivates me and gives me energy is people, is talking, is communicating, is thinking through ideas out loud. And so when I start to feel my energy wane, if I'm not doing things like talking to people, if I'm not doing things like casting vision, then I start to go. So when my tank is empty, like doing what I did last week in Irvine, I was literally all over the West Coast, this Irvine, Newport Beach, driving around, knocking on doors, having meetings and dinners and lunch, casting vision, trying to solve for problems. And I was thriving. I was doing really well. And I know that because you see the emotional, you see like the rising tide, your inner energy, however you want to call it, that just lifts me up and then like gives me the energy. So when I come back and have to get into the grind of reaching out to people, then following up, and I'm like, okay, remember, getting these emails out, doing these detail works will get you to set up for success, so that when you're in front of them, you're prepared, you're ready, you have that meeting. And whether or not I sell and actually close the deal, it doesn't matter as much. I know it matters because you need to close, but because you're going through the act of communicating, casting vision, and those are all aligned with my strengths, I'm in my happy spot. So this will subsequently give me emotional energy. I'm like, whether just your mother and my mother watch this, or hundreds of thousands of people, I'm getting energy just because I know that I'm built to talk. I'm made to talk. That's the way my brain works. That's my gifting, my strength, however you want to call it. And so I would really encourage people to look at something like the Big Five personality test, Strength Finders. Myers-Briggs isn't that scientific, so don't look at that one. The CI is really good too, because you can start to see, all right, does this industry suit me? And then how do I use my strengths in this industry? Because I started consulting for the company I'm working for now prior to coming on full time. And I don't necessarily get that jazzed up about technology. I'm not like following, what's going on with Tesla and all these SaaS companies. That's not really what drives me. I'd rather talk about baseball and whatever. But when I can get into a place where I know I'm connecting with people, I'm leading, I'm communicating, it doesn't matter if it's about technology, or if it's about purpose, or if it's about working out, or if it's about whatever. I do like physics randomly, but that stuff gives me energy. So I know when I'm communicating and I'm in this vein using a strength, it doesn't really matter what the topic is. I will thrive in it. And when my tank gets low, if I do those things, I can get filled back up and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I did it a few years ago. I pulled up my strength finders just for the fun of this right now. So just, I want to make sure that these are the correct one. I did the big 5 through a company called Gallup, but there's 4 different like groupings of strengths, I believe. Correct. And I'm looking at executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right test here. When I did this, 4 of my top 5 are all in influencing, and then I have 1 in executing, and nothing for relationship building, nothing for strategic thinking. It's just not in my top 5. And I can remember going over this with the person who was running the little seminar or whatever, and they said, yeah, a lot of people are probably going to think you're a bit of a jerk sometimes. Just want you to know and be prepared for that.
Yeah.
So
I know we mentioned Jesus earlier, so I won't, we don't necessarily need to articulate what I called you when I first met you, but I was pretty spot on. The thing I like about Clifton in particular is those 4 domains, and it's easy to see that you're an influencer. And I don't mean like you're going to get on TikTok and show us the latest bathing suit fashion or whatever it is.
Thank God for that, right? Yeah.
Nobody has time for that. But for you, if you are not in a place where you're communicating, I would guess you probably have command, communication. You might have maximizer or what is it? I'm thinking of the startup one. Basically, you like to get something off the ground and running. And so, for me, it's pretty similar. I'm really high on the influencing side. I actually can execute, and I have no relational, which always kind of shocks people. But what motivates me is making an impact on people's lives. That's really what drives me the most and gives me energy to go execute. I do have some of the thinking side, but like if you know that self about you, like I know people who are very green. That means they're on the thinking vein. And if they don't actually make time with no screens to think, whether it's like with a whiteboard or a journal, they just start to. There's people that are blue that are relationally motivated. If they are not connecting to people, they're like more concerned about the group than necessarily the destination. But if they're not, they're the glue of the organization. So when conflict with pain happens, they want to make sure everyone's on the same page, they're connected. And if they're not having places where they're just with a smaller group of people connecting to them, then they just, and then the doers, like those people that are the executors, they can be kind of cold or perceived as callous. They're like less talking, less influencing, less thinking, just do. But I find if they don't have like small projects where they can just feel a sense of accomplishment, whether it's you changed out your AC filters in your home and you scheduled your maintenance for your oil maintenance, if they're not doing those things, then they're not going to be that effective at work. So I'd like to think holistic is a word that people throw out. It's like you have to think holistically. How are you being at work, at home, and in light of your strengths and how your brain is wired? And if a lot of times you're fighting against your natural proclivity, your natural inclination. And so, that's work, home, that's everything in my estimation. So I like what St. Augustine had a prayer that said, I don't know it in Latin, but he says, let me know myself that I would know God. And so there is a measure of intimacy of knowing who you are and how you're wired, really your identity, that's going to drive it's either going to drive you to heaven, what I mean, where you feel effective, you're feeling yourself, you feel you're eating your oats and you're like, man, I had a great day at work, it was a great, father, mother, brother, sister, son, whatever. And I was thriving because you're probably in your strengths. You're in your element there. So I think it's important to know yourself so that when you get into those work positions, when you get drained, it's like, okay, how am I going to get back up so I can run? And so you're not running on just adrenaline and cortisol and burnout and end up, thinking you're having a heart attack when it's really an anxiety attack based off stress. So not that I would have ever had that,
but we've all been there. But no, I can hear that for sure. So just I think you're right on with mine. So I didn't show John any of this stuff. He's just naming them off the top. So top 1 is activator, communication, self-assurance, This is my one that's executing and not influencing, responsibility. And then the fifth one is command. So, I mean, you're hitting them right on the money, but yeah, I've noticed the exact same thing that you're talking about. I enjoy like the activator side of it and the command and communication. Like I enjoy sitting down and having a conversation with somebody, and the challenge of getting them to say yes to me and why they should say yes to me and not somebody else, as well as the challenge of trying to not convince, but sell their house now to all these different people who have so many other options here in Michigan. No, let me explain to you why this is the one for you. And no, I can definitely understand where you're coming from on that. I've noticed that when I get out of doing that, I on a regular basis, and I start doing the more of the executing stuff and having communication with lenders or other real estate agents or the title companies, I get very burned out, even though I'm making things happen to accomplish what it is that I'm doing. And it's tiresome. I can definitely hear you on that. So you've got 3 different, not small things that require you to travel, move around. I mean, it's a lot of moving pieces. And then on top of that, you're a father to, is it 4? 5. Wow. Hand is literally full. So yeah, a lot of balancing and things like that happening in your home, in your marriage, in your life. One of the things that I've noticed that I'm still learning is how to balance being so driven, being so focused on what it is that I have goal wise within my business, yet still continuing to be the father that I want to be, the husband that I want to be, the man that I want to be, and really balancing all of these different things. If you can speak to that a little bit too, and I more so speaking to the time balancing of it more than the feeling side of it. If you could get into that a little bit.
So I'll use command because I have command, but I think balance is stupid. What I mean by that is I don't know what it means. And so I like to think about presence. I like to think about being, and I like to think about being integrated. And so what I like about the Clifton idea is, I'm sure with Holly, your bride, command doesn't always go over, well at home with your kids, where you're like, I'm just going to tell you what to do. Now you should do it because I have self-assurance. And so the key is on these strengths, or how you're wired, is there's what Carl Jung would say is there's a shadow side and there's a light side. So for significance, I want to make an impact, which means I can be a maniacal egomaniac if it's left unchecked. So how do I integrate that thing at home, at work? So that's the first thing I would say is like integration. I like that word, that concept more than balance. The other thing is, so I just went on this trip to Colorado with a group of dudes. It was like the first time I've kind of done anything by myself other than work, by myself, a long time with these guys. And they had this really cheesy phrase, this cheesy saying, and I hated it at first, but it said, be where your boots are, because we're wearing hiking boots, we're in the mountain. And so I think the key for people who are really driven like yourself or me, or for people that might be more on the executing side, or people who are more on the cerebral side, the people who are blue, the relationship builders, they're really good at being present. It just comes naturally. So being where your boots are is really hard. And so like when I think about you, Rory, I think about all the different hats you might wear. I literally will wear a hat for the hat company, or I'm, the CEO of Bonfire, or now I'm putting on the consulting hat. So all require different strengths in being present in that moment. And so there's times when I need to sell. There's times when I need to lead. There's times when I need to be a dad. There's times when I need to set the phone down because my brain has not evolved to handle all the screens that I've had. So I like to think about, okay, how can I be present? And to me, when you say balance, it's more about choices, the choices that you're making. Like I love thinking about the future. I love vision. I love what's next. I don't always like what is right now. So especially in America where everything's go, go, go. And they're like, okay, Rory, I'm ready to see that house tomorrow. And it's Friday night. You're sitting down with your family for a family movie night. And they're like, I want to see it tomorrow at 8. And well, you have a baseball game. Like I would imagine that's so much more difficult for people that are in the single family home realtors than like myself. in the industry that I'm in. And so what I think is the choices that you make to be present, and then the skills that it takes, like the practices that it takes to actually be present, are not something that are taught. Because we might be on the phone, like texting, calling while we're driving, because you've got to communicate one more thing before you get to the baseball game. It's not necessarily a healthy practice for driving. We know that practically, but what are the things that you're choosing to intake and do on the way home so that you can be present, so you can have balance, so you can be integrated? How can you set one thing aside when you literally have this phone that's staring at you, calling for your attention, whether it's, what the Tigers are not doing at the trade deadline, or whether or not, they actually signed the docs to close. And so I think in order to be balanced, integrated, be where your boots are, it's about choosing, and it's about practices. What are some practices you can do to literally leave the stress behind? Or no, okay, now it's time to go into sales mode, where you have to communicate and cast vision. Or as you're starting the business, it's time to activate and execute. I think about what you said with, having command. It's like, okay, is it time to use that strength or not? And I think about, if you can't get these things integrated, then you're not going to be present. You're going to be all over the place, scattered, going a mile a minute, and you're going to wear everyone out around you, including yourself. And so again, I would say, what are the practices you have? What are the ways that you're present? And then what are the ways that you can integrate those things, your personality? What can you integrate those those light sides, a part of yourself, so that you can be present and do those things? So those are just some things that come to mind right off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm going to kind of touch on this really quick too, because I don't want to take too much time on the podcast, or your time, honestly, too. But the one of the things that I'm seeing around your site too is how important it is to be active and moving. I think on your own personal site, it talks about like, hey, we're even willing to create a workout plan, or a nutritional guide for you when it comes to doing A, B, C, and D, right? In order for you to be more effective in all these different areas. I had a coach on the podcast, I want to say it was about a year ago. And that was one of the things that he said, like, if you listen to me about anything, listen to me about this, because of all of the benefits that come with just being active and moving and having a routine that is involved in your schedule with that. Just to wrap up that piece too, because I know, are you still a big CrossFitter? Are you still doing CrossFit?
I am.
Yeah, never.
I was hoping that did you know I CrossFit? That joke is true. Yeah, man. I will say on the physical side. So, when we met, I was a pastor, and it was quite a stressful job. And I was pretty sedentary. I moved a lot because I would go drive and talk to people and whatnot, but I didn't do anything physically to take care of myself. And there's two ways I would think about it. I've become somewhat of a hippie with different ways you'd call it meditate, being quiet, grounding, some breath work. But at the same time, prior to this kind of physical awakening, I was getting overweight, bad cholesterol, too much beer, and wasn't sleeping. Granted, we were growing all of these kids and raising, so we weren't sleeping. And so I really didn't take thought of my body other than, I like this, I'm going to eat it, or this makes me feel good, I'm going to drink it, whatever. And so I am by no means an expert or an influencer. You can find them on Instagram, but like everyone now, they've kind of gone from that grind life. I woke up at 4 a.m. yesterday to get up today, and worked out and ran and all this other crap. And it's almost too much. But what I will say about the physical stuff, when I started to, when I started to be present with my body, I was like, man, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of stress. How am I going to deal with it? And I would deal with it by avoiding any, painful thought. And so what the physical nature of CrossFit has done is given me a way to accomplish something, to get stress out. I'm pretty intense emotionally. And so, man, it's like I need something intense to match that, so I can be more of the loving father and husband at home, or the less, what do you call it? I'm better able to regulate myself at work. And so, man, it started in 2019, really, we're in 2024. And I'm just now like 5 years in, 6 years in, I'm starting to see a lot of the benefits, but it's been literally a grind. So I would work out during the day, and now I've gotten to the place just for my family and for work. I have to get up at 5 to work out at 5:30. So my wife can work out at 6:30, so I can cook all the breakfast and get everything ready so I can set them up for success. And Casey's better when she's worked out, and she feels better, she sleeps better, all these different things. And so the benefits are great, but that's where the choice comes in. So it's like, at night, am I going to doom scroll through Twitter to see how bad the Astros are doing? Or am I going to work? What am I going to, so the choices I make about how I'm going to eat, what I'm going to drink, how I'm going to take care of myself so I can go to sleep and get up early and go through the grind of life has been a tremendous impact. And so I feel like in America we have, and this is the last little thing, and this is a little bit more philosophical, but we have this view of our body that we kind of disassociate from it. So we either worship it, like when we see some super fit, I don't know, movie star, beautiful actress, and we think that's the ideal. And then we look at ourselves and go, ugh. Or we like worship. And so that's one way of worshiping our bodies, or we kind of worship the pleasure we can get from our bodies. But we don't really do a good job of like just embracing, this is who I am, and this is how I can take care of myself, and this is what my body is built for. So like some people they need to swim and run. I would sink to the bottom of a pool. I need to push things and yell and scream while I'm doing it. And so I think trying to take into that consideration, being present in our physical bodies, recognizing where stress is coming from, recognizing where there's weakness, and then being okay with that, but then moving and doing, and there's all of these things. Peter Attila, you can find any podcast, listen to a Rogan one, and they're going to give you great insight on how to kind of tailor something to what you need. But yeah, if you're not moving, it's just, you're kind of set up to not be well emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, because we just discount how important we need these, flesh cans to walk around the earth. So we might as well take care of it while we're here. And so that's been 6 years ago when I started, it really started to see a great impact in what I'm doing vocationally, what I'm doing at home. I am a better husband, leader, father, boss, entrepreneur when I am moving physically. Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to wrap up on that. Dude, I'm super thankful you were able to take the time and be on this today.
Yeah, man.
Really hoping somebody sees that and they're able to kind of implement some of the things that we talked about, or whether it's going through the Strengths Finders test, starting to regularly get out in gym, or like you said, using what they know with their Strengths Finders test to really not just be about their business, but about their life and everything that they're doing. Super thankful for you, man. Seriously.
Yeah, dude. Glad to be here.
Yeah. I love it. Guys, thanks for checking out today's episode of Tuesdays with Rory. Super thankful for you guys.